once in a lifetime, maybe event. Who knows? Normally a lot of us would be gathering at the National Sports Collectors Convention, but instead some people had the foresight to use technology and say, hey, let's do this. And so here we are. And I'm Rob Bertrand, if you don't know, and watching for the first time. Joining me as always is my co-host, Ivan Lovegren. Ivan, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us through the technical difficulties. If you watch our show, Go GTS Live on Thursday nights, you know that 98% of the technical difficulties are my fault. So I will assume full responsibility for this one as well. But we are excited to be here. So excited, in fact, that we actually have a pretty big giveaway to announce. Not one, but two hobby boxes.
Courtesy of Panini America. Thank you, Tracy Hackler. We've got some Don Ross Optic baseball, and we have some Don Ross baseball. So two lucky winners will get a box randomly selected. But in order to be in the running, you got to do something for us. So, Ivan, what do they need to do?
So you do have to go follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/GoGTSLive. And that's because we use a program that pulls followers that also retweet a tweet. So you have to follow us. You have to retweet the tweet that's up there that has the picture of Rob holding up those boxes with a big smile on his face. And you have to watch at the end of the show, after our awesome hot seat interview that we have coming up with an industry leading veteran, David Reel. You will have to wait and hear if your Twitter name is called. So please, we hope that you are on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, it's free. You can sign up, twitter.com/GoGTSLive. And I am realizing, Rob, we dropped the ball on one thing.
No. What do we
I
do?
know we've got a super packed show and we don't have a lot of time to mess around, but we didn't come up with a special poll for tonight.
That's okay.
One of our trademark things on the show. So
that's okay. Having a different show is something we wanted to do tonight in light of this special occasion. And so what we're going to do, there's been lots of talk in the hobby recently about what the distributor's role is in the hobby. And for those of you who don't know, our show Go GTS Live is sponsored and presented by GTS Distribution. Ivan works part-time for them. I'm a full-time employee as the director of marketing for the sports and entertainment department. But to give you guys a better understanding of just what the deal is with distributors in the hobby right now and how they bring value to the equation, we've asked Vice President of Sports and Entertainment for GTS Distribution, David Reel, to come on the program and join us. So we're going to bring him in right now. David, thanks for taking some time to join us here on Hobby Palooza.
Yeah, thank you, Rob and Ivan. It's an honor. I mean, to see what Bench Clear Media is doing here and creating a platform for all of us to get online and talk what we love in this industry. It's pretty amazing. We all want to be at the National, and I know that that's not possible. And so my thoughts go out to everybody who's struggling now during this tough time. But this is a lot of exciting stuff that we can talk about and bring happiness to a lot of people who love this hobby.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah, and David, that's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on, because one, you are a staple at the National every year. Anybody that's on the business side of the hobby sees you there constantly, probably interacts with you constantly. But I also, Rob introduces you with your official GTS title. I know that you've got such a history in the hobby outside of just what you do at GTS that I think you're the perfect guest to talk with us about the role of distribution, how wax gets where it goes, and all of that. But first off, can we just get to know you a quick bit? Because I have a feeling that you have quite the collecting history yourself outside of just being an executive in the industry. Did you collect growing up?
Yeah, I sure did. I felt like I was one of probably hundreds of millions at the time, but might have been a little smaller than that. But it seemed like everybody that I knew was collecting baseball cards. And as a youngster, and getting into my teenage years, it didn't stop. And so I think I started as a comic book collector and then went to a comic book show one time and saw that baseball cards were, the collectible at the time. I had a passion for baseball, watching baseball, and those two things came together. And I from as long as I could remember, I was buying packs of cards and riding my bike and spending all my disposable income on trading cards, trying to collect my favorite players.
Well, behind you there, it seems like there's a bunch of them.
Oh, yeah.
What do you got going on in your man cave behind you there?
Well, it's one of the things I always wanted to do is make a wall of Ken Griffey Jr. cards. So
those are all Griffey's?
Yeah, there's about
That's awesome.
450 of them or so, but obviously he's got a lot more than that, and I have a few more that wouldn't make the wall. But yeah, that was something I thought would be a conversation piece in a man cave one day, and so I finally did it.
Very
Now,
cool.
I'm curious because I know you're a Cincinnati guy. Are those all Cincinnati Griffey's though, or is there a blend up there?
There's a blend. I mean, it's he didn't quite have the career in Cincinnati that he did as a Mariner, unfortunately, but he's still loved here. He's obviously a local boy. The Griffey family was here, spent a lot of time here, obviously, and so I'm originally from Cleveland area, so grew up in Massillon, Ohio, and Canton Football Hall of Fame and all of that, but moved to Cincinnati, and so I have a love for both the Cleveland Indians and the Cincinnati Reds. So I feel like it can do that since they're both representing different leagues. You know
that. Well, that begs the question. If a miracle happened and they met in the World Series, where does your allegiance lie?
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna pause that one until it actually happens, and I might never have to answer that question. But I can tell you this: I hope it goes 7 games and goes into extra innings on that last game.
There you go. Nice. Well, it's always comforting, I think, for people who are active collectors to know that the people on the business side, it's something that they're passionate about as well. The last thing I think collectors want is people that are just interested in the business side of things, and knowing that you're a collector obviously is very cool. But how did you get into the business side?
Yeah, well, I think it started when I was a kid, collecting. I remember when I was 13 years old telling people I'd work for Topps one day. And I realized that it wasn't that easy, just because I loved collecting cards, that I just thought they were going to hire me. I was going to have my paper route for a while, and then I guess I'd have to go to college or whatever. But eventually they'd want to hire me. Well, it's not that easy. At the time you had to, live in New York City. And so I became a stockholder when I was a teenager. I told my father that Topps stock was going up, and so he bought me 10 shares, which made me a shareholder, which allowed me to call into every quarterly conference call and feel like I actually owned a piece of the company. So I was an avid follower of the business side of it since I was a teenager, really, and then it wore people down over time. That's all I can say. It took me about 25 years, ultimately showing up at the Hawaii Trade Conference in 2005 and meeting a lot of the executives at Topps. And
well, wait, that's an industry event.
It is. I kind of invited myself. I think it was Krause Publications at the time that owned the conference. It was originally the Kit Young show, and then I think Krause owned it at the time. And I remember making a call to someone there and saying, "Hey, I wanted to go," and they said, "Yeah, it's just an industry event. You're not invited." And I said, "Well, I want to be in the industry, and this is the best place to do it." And after several phone calls, I think it just got tired of me and said, "Pay your registration, just don't make a scene." And so I kind of snuck in there, and it all worked out. Yeah.
So your first foray into becoming, working for a company, was it with Topps?
Yeah. I was with Honeywell International prior to that. So I was with Honeywell for about 13 years. And so I went from a Fortune 100 company to Topps at that time. And so I went into sales for Topps just as an account representative, basically, and worked my way through manager to director of hobby and then vice president of sales when I left Topps back about 6 years ago and joined GTS.
Did you move to New York?
I worked from New York, but I commuted, so it was pretty much.
Wait a minute, from Cincinnati?
Yeah,
How's that work?
Yeah, it's not good. I wouldn't recommend it. For a long time I worked from home, so I worked remotely. But the last 2 years, roughly, when I was vice president of sales, I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning on a Monday, catch the 6:30 a.m. flight out of Cincinnati to LaGuardia, and then I'd be in the office often before people's normal commutes arrived in Lower Manhattan. So usually sometime around 8:45 or 9 a.m. I got into the office on Monday, and I'd stay pretty much through the week, sometimes a couple weeks at a time. But it was a tough time from, the impact on the family, but it was a lot of great memories, and I wouldn't really have changed anything about that.
So I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit here, but that is sort of, there's an interesting hobby side of what you do outside of the business. Can you talk about, in today's lens, or also give us an idea of back then, you were director of hobby sales at Topps during 2009 and 2011. Can you recall the outlook for both the 2009 Bowman and the 2011 Topps update? Mike Trout, people weren't thinking the same about him now, but now you've got a Mike Trout card that may sell for more than a Honus Wagner that was in a product that you were part of.
Yeah, it's kind of surreal because I look back at those years, and especially in 2011, I think I was responsible for sales of all those cards. I was vice president of sales for hobby and retail, even at Topps. And so to think that all of those I had some hand in some way. Obviously, I didn't do all the design and the acquisitions and things like that, and then so many people had a part of that. But you never really could imagine where things are now, and that's a great example of it. I mean, every year we had fantastic rookie crops, or what we thought would be great, and some better than others, of course. But like I thought 2008, when Joey Votto was on Bowman Draft Picks and Prospects, I think it was the year before, Trout. I remember handing him a box of cards. He'd never seen it. And he was thrilled, and he was like a kid in a candy store seeing his image on a box. You think, wow, this guy's going to be the best thing. And of course, he's had a stellar career, of course, in Cincinnati. But to know Mike Trout was going to do what he did and has done so consistently and has become one of the greatest players of all time, and then to culminate that in an industry where the height of all heights in terms of value and collectability and demand, and those things lying together, you can really never imagine it. So to go back and say, oh yeah, we knew it was going to be great, we knew he was going to be the best, it would be, I think, a lot of people would be, on their islands right now, Skyping you from their private island,
Be honest, did you have trouble selling 2011 update at all? Are there people now that you're like, hey, remember when I called you and told you to buy some of that?
It's funny because there are certain products like that either sold too well and they shouldn't have, or didn't sell as well. It was pretty consistent around the timing. It wasn't anything that really blew everybody away. Like you see things now. I mean, the products now and the releases now are just so sought after. It was still, there's still a lot of people that collected in the 90s, and were a little gun shy, and so you never really knew where to put your money, and so people were spending in different places.
But there's no pallets of 2011 update at the bottom of the Hudson, right?
You know what? I think Cy Berger, I did talk to him about that, and he said that all of those were gone. It was just 52s that were down there.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more thing while we're on your hobby, or history at Topps rather, a little birdie told me that you might have had a hand in Topps revisiting the whole idea of T206 back in the day. Is that true?
Boy, geez. I don't know if I could take credit for that at all. I was there obviously when it was going on, and at the time there were a lot of conversations, like, in T206 obviously was one like that, where we were bringing back these vintage products, but there are a lot of other people that had more to do it than I did. I do remember, though, just to share a little bit of the history, is because I started in 2005, and we were talking about upcoming products that we could make. And I remember being in a room of a lot of counterparts and a lot of product development guys, and coming up with Allen and Ginter and triple threads and those concepts, and really, going back to say, wow, it's probably Clay Laraski and guys like Clay Laraski, and I know Alan Nars was a consultant then, and a lot of those guys that brought a lot of historic perspective to the table and would call out products like that. And I remember when Allen and Ginter was brought up, and obviously that's been a stellar product throughout now decades since then. So certain things like that. But T206, I had some things to do more to sell it, and I don't even think I did a good job selling it that year. That when we brought it back, it didn't do what probably didn't even do what Topps did this year on the online version.
Yeah, well, I know like T205, 206, Cracker Jack. It seemed like those were all one and dones.
Yeah, it was different. I mean, there are certain concepts about that product. I remember when we brought it back, we wanted to bring a lot of the vintage parts, so not have caps and things like that, and you lost a lot of the the logos and the marks and things like that. And I think you can do that in certain products from a vintage standpoint, but when you really want to celebrate the teams and the colors and the all the things that you relate to the players, I think a lot of that was lost in the product at that time, from my perspective.
Cool.
Well, so David, with all that context in the industry, now you work for GTS. I always want to say go GTS just because I'm indoctrinated. But you work for GTS, helping get products from manufacturer to the end consumer. Can you talk about the role of a distributor and why a distributor is necessary?
Yeah, distributors have always been necessary. And when I was on the manufacturer side, we relied a lot on the distribution network, primarily to really assist, be a partner between the manufacturers and the customers, and ultimately the end consumers. And so from a standpoint of what you're providing to the manufacturer, you're providing them with information, you're providing them with constant feedback, a pulse of the marketplace, things like that. And from the perspective of the customer, you're providing them with product and notifying them when the product's out, providing potentially terms and opportunities to fund the product and help them out with their business, providing them with other things that will keep their business thriving, and also stocking product and actively keeping product that ultimately they'll want, and they'll ask for, and we find it, or we're collecting it ourselves so that we'll have that product available to a multitude of customers. So there's a lot of things, and it does ebb and flow for sure, because the industry is always changing. And you two are a great example of how distribution has evolved. Back when I was at Topps, there wasn't, I don't think, a distributor that had, sometimes not even one person in marketing, let alone, a team of marketing people, and to have, a show and have media and have connections across the industry as a distributor. I think it's a testament to how distribution has really evolved, and has, obviously this is, this Go GTS Live, for example, is a great asset, not only to the customers and collectors, but also to the manufacturers who rely on the content that you provide.
Awesome. Well, now I very commonly see from the collector level, sort of a misunderstanding of all the logistics that go into it, and why can't the company just send out product directly? At the same time, we're now seeing that there is a lot more direct to consumer offerings coming from the manufacturers. In fact, if I am correct, you are part of laying that foundation at Topps. So can you talk about how that changes the landscape, or really, how a distributor still is a vital piece of the hobby as digital systems make things a little easier?
Yeah, it's definitely an evolution. And my example when I was at Topps was we were testing, kind of testing that whole concept. And it was, well, there are a lot of things you could say that were before their time, but they were all in advancement of, really what exists now. My involvement in sales was really just to understand, what could go into the market. And, even at that time, knowing, and still manufacturers combined, I think every manufacturer still relies on the hobby channel even more than the retail in terms of revenue. I think that's probably true. And at the time, that was the same thing back then. And so there was this thought that, if you're taking hobby content and you're putting it online, that you're going to challenge some of the things that work really well and maybe alienate your customer base. And that there's a trade-off there, because there were products that we tested that ultimately did that kind of set some things back. And it wasn't with that intent, for sure. The whole idea was to really grow the business, reach consumers that you can't reach through normal distribution, whether it's retail, through mass market, or through the hobby channel, through hobby stores or breakers, or breakers weren't even existing then, but through the normal hobby channels through distribution. So there were a lot of things, and even now there's a lot of things, I'd say that a lot of testing the market in terms of what you can do, and all for the sake of really growing the pie. That was the whole intent. It's not to provide something to someone who, they deserve it and you don't give it to them. It's not like that. It's really to advance the whole entity of the industry and marketability of the product. So, I look back at some of the products that were done, and it was different back then, because there wasn't you didn't have all of the technology. Obviously, you didn't have all the demand that you have as well, and there wasn't a solidified channel that you have now of purchasing online, and an expectation that you can buy anything online now versus what it was like back then.
One of the things that I think the manufacturers have been seeing is that if they had any hopes of ever going 100% direct, the fulfillment process of their online stuff in general, I think they've had us take a step back and go, you know what, this is a little bit more difficult than maybe we thought, because I know there's a lot of people waiting for their Project 2020 cards and things like that. So one of the things that I think that online has been able to do for the manufacturers is attract new people into the hobby that then end up finding, hopefully, a hobby store in their area. And I know that's been one of the goals of online and direct sales for manufacturers. So what do you see then as the biggest challenge in the hobby today, and where do distributors fit into that?
Well, it's a loaded question. I think your first part about really growing the hobby overall, I'd say the manufacturers have done a tremendous job about doing that. And your example about still relying on the distributor network is very true, because especially at the rate of growth in this industry that we've seen the last couple of years, and especially even over the last 6 months, it's really phenomenal. So fortunately, you have a lot of channels of distribution, and all of them are pretty much tapped in terms of how much product you can push through there. So, to your point about, doing these things and expanding the perspective and selling to, reaching more people and relying on other avenues, it's worked. I mean, it really has. And it's worked globally. It's not just, a North American concept. It's really worked globally. And we're seeing that more and more. So, those that are apprehensive about that model, or those that feel like it doesn't work or it's against them, it's actually not true. It's expanding the business, and everybody has to kind of find out, where their value is in the chain, and do what you can the best, and find unique opportunities to grow and be more valuable to that partner, no matter who it is. If you're a store, we see stores all the time that become more valuable customers in different ways. Same with, we see breakers that are doing things that we never could have envisioned, and it makes us a better distributor, for example. And then, we do things like, Go GTS Live and other things like that make us more valuable to the manufacturers. And I think that's the key, is that's not going to change. We're going to have to find ways to do that more and more. And so, going back to your question, Rob, about challenges, I think, for as good as things are, there are challenges, and a lot of those right now are, with the manufacturers, they're getting a tremendous amount of demand for their products, and it starts right there. Their goal is to satisfy the market as much as they can while creating a collectible, and the demand that's put on those, on the manufacturers, which ultimately they have to put more more pressure on the leagues, on the players, to get assets and approvals and all those things. It becomes more and more complicated. So, this industry is used to ebbs and flows and ups and downs, but the
Sure.
fact that it's been a trajectory that's been going up for so long has continued to add pressure, and do that in a pandemic. It even heightens the challenges for sure.
Well, I think we saw, again, using the Project 2020 example, we saw that rampant, steady, and then just shoot up and create a bubble.
Mm-hmm.
It was very measurable because the print runs were published online. People were able to see this vast shoot up and recognize that it was not indicative of the amount of collectors out there. At the same time, every single day on my Twitter, I get new followers from people that haven't collected and are buying Topps flagship, or
Mm-hmm.
buying Panini Prism if they can find it, or scooping up whatever they can find.
Yeah.
So, frank question, are we in a bubble?
Well, I think I don't think we are, and the reason I say that is I think you can look back at the bubbles of this industry, and there are a lot of differences. You look back at the '90s, when things were crazy from that perspective too, in terms of the number of releases, the number of licensed partners that the leagues had to make trading cards, and then you looked at really a lot of capped potential for demand. Now you're looking at, with the breakers being so successful, and being able to do transactions instantly, and people be able to break product and consume it so fast. People are running to their stores or running to mass market, or just sitting at home opening product virtually through breaking. It's a lot different. The demand and the reach of the card industry right now has never been greater from that standpoint, and the number of consumers that are actively partaking, at various levels, whether they're collecting, like you said, Ivan, a base brand product, or putting a set together, or they're speculating. They're taking what Gary Vee's saying and they're running with that, things like that. There's a multitude, and what's so different now is, back in prior bubbles, from my perspective, is the manufacturers could keep pumping out product and making as much as they could, but now, based on how a product is put together, especially from the hobby side and even retail, with all of the variations and parallels and things like that, and the value that goes into that, there's only so much you can produce of each release, and that's a lot different now, because you're capped at a certain production level, and you have demand that far exceeds that. And we see that more often than not. Not every product's going to be a winner, but more often than not, in this current marketplace, the demand far outreaches the supply. And I just don't see that next week or next month or a year from now that's really going to change. Now, we know well enough that in this industry, everything that goes up must come down. So we do know that it's going to happen at some point. But to say that we're near it, there were people putting money down, that making wagers that we hit the peak 9 months ago, and then the end was near, because you get out now while you can. But those that stuck with it only saw greater demand, higher secondary market values. And really, the thing that I think is most interesting and different from bubbles of past is that there was a lot of product at the time in the past, and there were pockets of it, like you said, but now that product that has been sitting there has been getting consumed at a much higher rate too. So not only are you getting releases that come out on release date, and the product gets hit and consumed, and of course you have people that are buying it and trying to manage that and invest and speculate, but all of the product that has come before us is just dwindling in supply, and some of it obviously gets put away for a long time or whatever, but it's harder and harder to get. And we're seeing that consistently every day. When we look at values and we look at replacing product as a distributor, it's harder to do. We're paying escalated values of the product that really are unheard of. And so I think there are a lot of differences, because, for example, every time we make a big purchase and we think, wow, we probably paid too much for this product, in the secondary market, for example, we're glad we did, because the next week we're buying it at a higher price. And it's really unique. And again, we know that it's not going to be like this forever, but the economics of the business and the current demand tell us that we're in for a bull market for a while yet.
Before we gloss over something you just said, a lot of people aren't aware that distributors buy on the secondary market.
Mhm.
And the reason being is that after initial release, there's still demand for the product well past whatever was pre-ordered on original solicitation. So a distributor will do whatever it can to fill demand after release, correct?
Yeah, that's true. Your best distributors are out there actively buying products so that you have it when you want it, if you're a customer of the distributor. So, whatever the product is from GTS's perspective, whatever the product is, as long as there's demand for it, we're going after it. So that's a critical part, to our business. We can't, obviously we're grateful for any allocations we get from the manufacturers, but we have to source product, any way we can, really, to have product available for our customers. So we do all kinds of things. We go out into the market whenever it's available for sale, and we're buying it, and we're offering to purchase it from our customers. After we've even offered their allocation to them, if they come up with any additional product. We're looking at every avenue, and we do that constantly. And we're not the only distributor doing that. It's really important to actually, have product available well throughout the whole life cycle of the product, which goes well beyond the release date.
Well, real quick, actually, sorry, I do have to just remind people, because we're 40 minutes in. If you need some product, we're giving away 2 hobby boxes for viewers on tonight's show, but you do have to enter if you're a little late to the show by going to twitter.com/GoGTSlive and retweeting the tweet. It should be pinned that says retweet and watch live to enter. So just wanted to remind the viewers that you can get some product for watching this interview tonight.
Thank you, Ivan. See, I mean, I couldn't do this job without him, Dave. You brought up what is perhaps considered by many the nastiest word in the hobby right now when you mentioned allocations.
Oh, I've heard that one. Yeah.
So talking about supply and demand, I mean, can we address publicly here a little bit what is often, the most criticized function of distributors, and that is allocations? Can you walk us through the process from manufacturer down to the LCS, and what happens when someone goes to their LCS and they say, I didn't get enough product, I can't sell you blank?
Yeah. Well, if you start at the end and I can't get enough product, I think there's no one in the chain that feels like they can get enough product. So, and that's, usually when you can't sell through a product, the word allocation doesn't really mean anything. But when the market's like it is now, it seems like it means everything, right? And so, you start with, demand that's up here, no matter what channel you're talking about, and you have, this much ability to supply that demand, and you start right there. So the manufacturers, again, they want to sell product, they want to move product, they want to get product to the collectors, but yet they're going to have limitations. So it starts really with the limitations of how much product you can make for whatever reason that is, and a lot of the times, it's important, obviously, for the manufacturers to keep in check, making sure that the product is collectible. But really, they're driven by limitations on how many assets they can get to make a certain volume of product. So you start right there, and then they have to, they look similar to like what we do, and I assume everybody in the chain does. They look at their partners and who's been through them, with them thick and thin, who's best representing their products and their brands, and based on
direct accounts and distributors. We're at that level now, right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So the manufacturers have, and everyone has a little bit different model, but ultimately it's the same thing. They determine how much they can produce, they can determine how much they can spread out, and of course they're different. You have retail product, you have hobby product, you have online sales. You have various things that will be different channels. And so obviously you're spreading those across, multiple channels. And then you're basically, rewarding your customer base with allocations that they've deserved or earned. And it's not any different at the distributor level. Once you get down to the distributor level, we have thousands of customers as a distributor. We literally have thousands of customers that want to buy sports cards products. But there's sometimes we don't even have 1,000 boxes, and there's times where we don't, we have even far less than that. And so that's a challenge because we feel like we have thousands of good customers, but we only have product to satisfy a portion of those. And so we have to make tough decisions too. And really what we do as a manufacturer or as a distributor, and similar to like what the manufacturers do and probably other distributors, and every distributor is different, just like every manufacturer is different, but you ultimately want to reward your customer base with product that they've earned. And you, in our case, we have an allocation model that we can follow, that we're very, we're very consistent in terms of how we utilize it. But ultimately, for every release, we are able to quantify how much each customer has earned of that product. And sometimes it may be a very small portion, but whatever that portion is, that's the allocation that they've earned. And so whether you're talking about our best customer or our customer that's bought the least, no one's really happy with that allocation because we're not happy with the allocation we received. And of course, the manufacturers want to even make more than what they were able to allocate out. So, that's kind of it at a high level. You can dig down, but we're in the business of selling product, and we're in the business of growing the customer base. And so you throw those challenges into it, that's more of a reason why we have to be very aggressive on the secondary market. And if a product comes out and say, it's normally a $200 box, and the market is saying it's $1,000 box, we're paying $1,000 a box so that we can get it to sell it to our customers to make a little bit of profit, but have it for them. And so that's how it works. It's like I said, it's more difficult when the demand is so much greater than supply that it has been. But it's important, I think, from a distributor perspective, and really anybody in the chain, to have a consistent model that you can rely on. And so, each distributor does it a little bit different, and manages that in a particular way to where they can, really reward those customers that have been through thick and thin.
Yeah, let me ask you a little bit about that too, because you're a collector. We didn't talk about this yet, but if you Google David Reel, you can find an article in the Wall Street Journal in 2005 where you're quoted talking about Barry Bonds cards before you even worked at Topps, right?
That's true, yeah.
So another thing that I hear from collectors all the time is we're in a new junk wax era, but at the same time, there's this issue. So can you talk about, does GTS as a distributor lobby the manufacturers with what you're hearing from shop owners and breakers and what you're going through on that side? Or where's the point where they're going to start overproducing? Like there's a lever there, and I don't know how to fully explain it, but
yeah, no, I know what you mean. There's some strong economic factors there in real business assessment. Because all the manufacturers have to plan for the future, and they have a lot of commitments that they have to make financially to produce product. And so they have to make decisions well in advance. And in a marketplace like this, you can't make enough accurate decisions. And even when the times aren't good, you're making decisions the other way. So you can never really hit the market right. But the thing that I see right now in terms of that balance is, like talked a little bit about before, is that there are a lot of things that are different now than they were, back in the days when you looked at junk wax. You can't really compare what's going on now with junk wax because the demand for that product is so much higher. There aren't, pallets and pallets of just sitting there that nobody wants. It's different. It's different now. And so, as you can see, and you walk across the aisles at Walmart and Target, you see that there are a lot more people buying these products than ever have been before. And so, to know exactly when that would break is unknown, but you also have to realize that there are millions of people in other countries that are passionate collectors, if not tens of millions, if not soon hundreds of millions, if not even more, that are as excited to open these products as the people around us and the people that we're used to collecting and trading with. So the global economic impact and the fan base for a lot of these sports is different than it ever has been.
Yeah, 1987 Topps wasn't exactly reaching an international audience, was it?
That's true. No, those wood borders are beautiful, but they never eclipsed the market that we see now.
So how do we balance a desire to grow the hobby with the need to support those already in it? Especially, I mean, it's like when DVDs and VHS first came around, it was like there was a movie store rental place on every corner, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And if you wanted to go into that business, there was obviously plenty of supply because the distributors can just make more. Well, we're talking about something that is not infinite. It's finite because there's a level of collectability that needs to be maintained to it. So, I mean, is the answer for someone wanting to open a hobby shop in this market simply don't? Bad idea? Or, I mean, how, you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. and it's just different now, right? Like I've only been in the industry, 15 years, a little over 15 years, which is a short amount of time compared to a lot of people that I work with. And a lot of people have done, amazing things in the industry. But, you look at the people that have come on board recently, you look at the phenomena of breaking and seeing where it is now versus where it was. It's just a matter of being more creative or doing something better than somebody else or finding a new way to do it. So I would never discourage anyone from, following their passion and getting in the industry. I would just tell them, figure out a way, that, because you look at people, and if you talk to, we were at the National right now, you could walk around and you could see a lot of successful businesses in this industry. And every one of them has a story about why they had to put some sweat equity into what they did, or they had to get more creative, or they had to do something different than the other guy, or better than the other guy, or come up with a personality or some uniqueness or marketing or whatever. There's 1,000 different things that you could do for you to stand out. So if you're going to stop just because somebody tells you your allocation's too low and you're going to say, I give up, I can't run a business, well, then it's probably right. You should probably do something different. But if you have the attitude that, wow, I can buy the product, I might just have to pay a little bit more for it, and I might have to find out another way to make money by doing it, or, wow, the demand's so strong, maybe I can sell it for more. There's a lot of different ways that you can look at the business and find a spot for it. So, again, I think if you're short-sighted and you look at, you run into a wall and that's the only wall you're going to accept that you face, and you turn around, maybe you're not cut for this industry. But if you want to climb over that wall and think of ways to be the best, I could give hundreds of examples of people that have done things better than the other person in a certain way, and they're at the top of the food chain in a short amount of time. So, and the next person is just waiting. There were more people in line to do that, and to think that you're going to not be able to get in this industry and be successful, I think the limitations are on yourself rather than pointing fingers at somebody else.
Well, so with that in mind, we also just went through, and we're still going through, an immense challenge. You're a logistics company and a supply chain company that got through, the COVID-19 shutdowns. During all of the challenges of the last 5 months, what is something unique or fun or successful that you've actually seen, whether it's in the hobby or in the distribution channels, that has actually come out? Give us a positive.
Well, I think there are a lot of them for sure. I would say, you talked about the online sales and reaching new consumers and things like that. And I think, there are great examples of like what Panini's done with First Off the Line. You've given products that were not necessarily available to the end consumer in that sort of form, and they've done things, created Dutch auctions, found out creative ways to get product in other people's hands. Just like you were saying, Rob, is at some point somebody says, well, I can't get that. Well, there's an avenue that goes around current, channels that allow it to do it. Now, it doesn't necessarily benefit the distributor, for example, and it might not, but it could benefit a store if they choose to participate in it. Nobody is really restricted from participating in something like that. But you look at, what Panini's really done there. They've done a fantastic job trying to balance that supply and demand equation. You have a lot of smart people over there. You have, a lot guys like Kevin Hake and DJ as a vice president over there who come up with creative ideas and ways to market to the consumer and stuff like that. And then you have on the top side, you have, the Project 2020, which is just outstanding. They've really revolutionized the direct-to-consumer individual cards in ways that are very compelling. And that came out of nowhere and has been a tremendous success for that company. And I know guys, David Liner and those guys over there are doing a phenomenal job coming up with creative ways. So there are a lot. And even like Topps did the million card rip party for Series 1, which was a fantastic event. Those are different times. That was back in February. But
I know it seems so long ago.
So that's the thing about this industry is that, you could look at it and say, oh, I didn't get a piece of that, or that's not fair. That wasn't handed to me. But you look at the amazing thing that everybody's doing throughout the channels. And that's the thing that I love about this industry is that, for every naysayer, for somebody that says this isn't fair and that's not right and all that, you have thousands of people that are very successful that are either providing products to people that wouldn't have them otherwise or making them happy. And that's, you guys are two examples of that too. You guys bring smiles to people's faces that love this hobby. And I'm constantly reminded of things like that. So those are just some that come to mind, but it's what comes next that I'm really looking forward to. And we don't even know what that is yet.
Well, thank you for the great plug.
Yeah,
I was just going to mention, if you're having trouble getting cards, our show every Thursday night, Rob, I'm looking at this last week. There was 15 people that won last week that won everything from Zion rookie cards, a Luka numbered card, a Dennis Rodman autograph. We rip product every single week and give away the hits to viewers. So remember, to enter to win the 2 boxes we have to give away, you had to go to twitter.com/GoGTSlive and follow and retweet us to enter. But make sure that you don't stop following after this, because every single week we are helping get product to you, even if you are the end consumer that gets skunked at retail every single time you try to find something. So
there you go. Well, you brought up you made a perfect transition, David. I mean, we've talked, about your credibility in the hobby. We've talked about some of the challenges facing, every aspect in the supply chain. So let's have a little bit of fun to close things out. And you mentioned the future. So what is something really fun or successful that you've seen come out, not only of the challenges of the past 5 months, but what do you see as being something that you see as an opportunity moving forward that the hobby has as a whole?
I think the biggest thing is when you look at, when I was a collector growing up, my world of the hobby was going to the card show and going to my local card shop. And that was the vision. And man, being able to go to the national, that was something special if I could do that. And that was a once a year thing. To me, this industry is now so global. You look at sports that are global, like soccer, for example, and you look at how fast that whole industry the soccer card industry has grown, and how popular that is across continents that maybe only cared about stickers or maybe not collectibles at all. And so, we're talking about collectibles, and we're talking about a global economy and a global fan base now. And to me, that's the thing that's most exciting, is that, I may, treasure this card and think that I'm the only one that does. And now I realize that there are, people like me that have the same kind of interest in what I like. And there's not only, a couple more, there's maybe thousands more, and we don't even speak the same language. And so I think that's really a big difference maker now, that we see, and what will change the course of what manufacturers do and those that supply products to end consumers, is really going to be leveraging the global marketplace that we have ahead of us.
I know this will be hard for you because you are not one to toot your own horn, but we all have things that we're proud of, for those of us who work in the hobby. And like you said, you've been around 15 years, not as long as some people, a lot longer than some other people, but that's a pretty good chunk of time. So during your time in the hobby, what's something that you're most proud of from a personal accomplishment or contribution standpoint?
Wow, geez. I mean, there are a lot of things that I feel like I've been part of, and that makes me pretty proud to say I've been a part of. As far as taking responsibility for something, this industry is too great. I mean, I idolized Cy Berger for giving us all an opportunity to do something we love, and I had the chance to talk to him and work with him well after he retired at Topps, and I look at guys like that, and there are a lot of them that have done amazing things in this industry that allowed me and guys like you to do what you love and have a part of this industry. I said, so, I think if I have one takeaway, it probably is the friendships that I have in the industry, more so than, saying I did this or did that. It's really, being able to share a passionate, committed direction of growth within the industry with a bunch of people that really want to do the same thing and bring joy to a lot of other people and be able to make a living for it. I pinch myself every day that I'm in an industry that I love and to do this. And I'm able to, because of that, I'm able to impart things to my kids and say, do something you love and be the best at it. And you'll be happy when you look back at your career.
Amen to that. I feel the same way every day.
I love it. Well, hey, we're actually a minute over, but are we okay? We haven't gotten kicked off yet.
We've been told that we actually have until 10:15.
Oh, okay.
They pushed Hobby Jeopardy back because of our late start.
Oh, man. Well, first off, apologies to everybody that's now tuning in, expecting this to be Hobby Jeopardy. It's my fault. Technical difficulties on Ivan's side. Twitter.com/@WatchTheBreaks. Okay, well, in that case, David, if I can ask you one other question, let's project a little bit further. Mm-hmm. Where do you see the hobby in 6 months, a year, 5 years? Give us the crystal ball.
Well, I think, 6 months from now, I think it's fair to say that it's not going to be tremendously different from the standpoint of the supply and demand equation. I mean, you put yourself 6 months from now, you're looking at, early 2021, we're going to be in a good place. I think we're going to be in a good place as far as where the market is, the excitement about, hopefully we'll have, the pandemic more behind us. We're counting on that, and then more reality in terms of what we're used to for professional sports. And as we all know that are collectors, you have, baseball season coming around, spring training, everything seems to be good. Anything that had happened bad in terms of your collector choices or purchases you made or the marketplace, those are all behind you. Those are all
yeah.
Those are all back in 2020, the year that we're going to curse for a while. But I mean, I don't think it's going to be that much different from a standpoint of you're going to have a big collector base and manufacturers trying to keep up with that demand. I think you're going to see a lot, very strong secondary market values as well. And some of the challenges that you talked about, both Ivan and you, Rob, talking about, hey, I go to my store and I want to get this and it's not there. People are still going to have to be very creative in terms of where they go to get product. And I think you're going to see, a lot of the same challenges, maybe some new solutions to those that we haven't seen. But when you look out 5-6 years, I project that we're going to see a robust hobby. I think one of the things that has come out of this, the last several months is that anybody who questioned that this industry was resilient probably had a wake-up call, because we're in a place that we're all very blessed. I think you guys both said it, that we're blessed that the industry is thriving, and not everybody and not every industry is even close to the amount of success stories that we can really talk about in this industry.
Absolutely.
Right now.
Absolutely.
So, hopefully that'll continue for this industry. But I think that the fact is that it has been resilient, and it has really thrived, and it's thrived for a lot of the reasons that are true and good about the hobby. And of course, you factor in speculation and, whatever the reason is why you're getting into this hobby, and then you start questioning some of these things. There will be some settling of, secondary market values and things. It's all about the value that you get out of the product. So the manufacturers strive to put value in the product. They're not happy when they build a product for a couple $100 and now it's going for $1,000, because they know that they're going to be disappointed consumers. So there will be a balance, and there'll be some adjustments, obviously, in terms of the economics, of course. But I think what you're going to have is that you're going to have a lot of the people that have come into the hobby, for reasons that are sustainable, and they're going to be around. And you're also at the same time going to be growing this industry globally. And so they're going to be trending on a path that maybe, 5 or 10 years before, similar where we were, in terms of understanding the hobby, understanding how it works, trying to find ways to source product, deciding what you want to collect, and all those things. And all those are really healthy metrics to balance out the economic factors. So I'm very bullish, and I'm even more bullish based on what I've seen in this industry in the past 5 years. I feel like in 15 years, I've seen every cycle that you could have in this industry.
I searched really hard because I remember, and I couldn't find it when I was preparing the show notes, but I remember one time when I was looking you up, because I stalk you regularly, David. I don't know why. You're just such a fun guy to stalk. No, I think I was searching something on 2013 in Tops or 2014 in Tops a few years ago, and I found an article where you were quoted talking about cutting back, talking about producing less.
Yeah.
So, remind us, there has been a recent, depending on how long your memory is, a recent shift when companies had produced a little too much and were producing less the next year, right?
100%. I mean, there were cycles where, there are a lot of people that go, at the manufacturers that pride themselves on making great products, and you measure the success of the product by, how well it performs in a lot of different ways. And a lot of that is also financial. The company's they need to make money on products that they produce. And, the secondary market value and the followed up demand, obviously a lot of that's driven by the rookie crops of that come out in the sport and that show up in the product. But there are a lot of elements that go into, creating the product. Sure. And so there are times where, we thought we were making great products, but the marketplace just said, it wasn't good enough. And so you have to make tough choices. Right now it's a very unique time, and we've been in this a lot longer than we thought in terms of, the continued trend, and it is probably going to continue, but it's not always going to be like that. No, it always hasn't been. I remember I was in charge of the hobby when Steven Strasberg had Tommy John surgery. And so I look at that as an example of one of the biggest collapses, and that was talking 10 years ago within the industry, and myself included, and people around me. You just didn't sleep at night. Nothing was going well, and it was all based on everybody's speculation tied to one particular player. And we learned a lot through that process. I mean, there are a lot of people that that nobody had bad intent in terms of making product that people didn't want, but it got to a point where so much speculation occurred around one player, and the supply and demand equation went the other way. And I tell some people, because my wife is a sport about me and my hobby, and has been, and about this industry, and I remember it was I don't know, it was like October, and the market was bad in 2010 in October, and she said, "Man, you've been a real jerk lately." And and I go, and I probably will be till January. I remember, and to this day, I still remember how callous was that, But I felt that way. I thought it wasn't going to be until the calendar year turned, and then we start looking at a new baseball season and put this behind us. And I remember feeling that way, and it wasn't anything right you could do during those times. So for those of us that have lived through that kind of pain, you really relish the moments like this, and they're not always going to be like that, but you can find bright spots, pretty much all the time.
Well, David, you know what? You gave us everything we wanted and more. I hope we answered lots of questions related to the supply chain and where distributors fit in. And I loved some of your answers, but we're going to close this out on you answering our poll question from this past Thursday, which was, with 2 huge cards selling this summer, which do you think is going to go for more money? Is it going to be the LeBron James Superfractor or the Mike Trout Superfractor?
Wow.
Keep in mind, the Mike Trout is autographed.
Yes.
The LeBron is the Topps Chrome Superfractor, but non-auto.
Right. Yeah. So if I get the right answer, do I get the other card?
You wish.
Yeah. Right.
You and 180 other people that voted in our poll, right?
Yeah. You know what, man, you're talking 2 of the greatest players that ever played the game, in their sport, and both iconic cards in so many ways. If I had to put my money on it, I'm going Mike Trout.
He went your way, Ivan.
Is that you, Ivan? All right.
Yeah. I went with the global appeal. I think there's going to be some pretty big Asia Pacific influence. All it comes down is to 2 billionaires who want that card, right?
We'll see. Logic. Yeah.
All right. We're going to put you on hold while we give away this stuff. Don't go anywhere so we can wrap up with you. But thank you again for joining us. And Ivan and I will talk to you in just a minute. All right. Well, how about that, guys? I mean, that was so much information. I mean, it was like you could write a textbook, right, about the hobby right now, I think. I hope
that's great, because that's what the National is about. Our main stage is about bringing in hobby people, industry people, and some of the influencers that are out there. And wow, that was really a peek behind the curtain, literally, because at the National, there's generally a curtain where GTS holds meetings with everybody debating all those things. We need more of this. We need less of this. We need more of this. So thank you so much, David, for coming on and facing some of those questions head on as well. Huge thank you to Bench Clear Media for having us be able to fill this time slot, be part of the Hobby Palooza.
Yes, thank you very much.
We've got a full crowd, 120 plus people that have joined us. I've been seeing the chat. I've been trying to chat back when I can. So very cool seeing so many good friends in there, and some new friends. So how do we stay friends? Well, it's pretty simple. You can follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/GoGTSLive. If you're a little newer, if you're big on YouTube, which is a great community, I strongly encourage you joining Twitter also. Great hobby community, great conversation platform. And then tune back in next week, Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, to our show where we'll be giving away more stuff. We rip boxes, preview products, and just give it away. That's the fun part.
Speaking of which, we got 2 boxes to give away right now.
Yeah, we've got a Donruss baseball box and a Donruss Optic baseball box to give away, the entire box of each. We're not ripping them. We thought hobby conversation was more important tonight. So you're going to get the chance to rip this wax. So thank you to everybody that entered. The randomizer has spoken, and I pulled the winners just towards the end of that interview there. Pretty excited. It is 2 great people in the hobby that I've gotten the chance to meet. One of them in person at the National. Wait, no, I think I've met both of them in person at the National. When the National's in Cleveland, I believe. I'm going to give away their name now. But first off, so the Donruss baseball box is going to Go St. Louis Blues. Congratulations, Go St. Louis Blues, who ironically I tweeted with for about a year before I realized it wasn't Ghostal Blues. It was Go St. Louis Blues.
And who wins the Optic box?
And the Optic box is Grady Fish in C. congratulations, Grady Fish and Sea, who lives near David, North Canton, Cleveland, somewhere around there. So Ohio.
So this is what you need to do to claim your prize. Please email us GoGTSLive, so the name of the show, at gogts.net, the name of the blog. Please include what you won, your Twitter handle, your full name, and your mailing address. GoGTSLive at gogts.net. All right, stick around because right in just a minute here, late night round 2 of Hobby Jeopardy. I think Ty is hosting that, but thank you for having us as part of Hobby Palooza. We hope that some of you will join us for a regularly scheduled program next Thursday. So stick around for Hobby Jeopardy and have a great weekend, everybody. Good night.